In the winter of 1941, Adolf Hitler stopped sleeping in the same place twice. His aides noticed at first the shuffling of schedules, the last-minute changes to motorcades, the sudden relocations from one command post to another in the dead of night. The man who had ordered the invasion of the Soviet Union, who had stood triumphant over Paris, who believed himself untouchable by history itself, was sleeping in bunkers. Not because the enemy was at the gates, but because he no longer trusted the men standing beside him. Historians have a name for what happens to authoritarian leaders when a war they were certain they would win begins to stall. They call it the paranoia spiral. And the pattern, once you know what to look for, is almost impossible to miss. Here's why I'm telling you this tonight. A report from a European intelligence agency obtained by CNN describes something that, if you've been watching this space closely, should stop you cold. It describes a Russian president who, as of March 2026, is no longer sleeping in his official residences. A Russian president whose personal chef, whose bodyguards, whose photographers, the people who take his picture for state media, now have surveillance systems installed inside their private homes. A Russian president who has quietly, methodically, begun to disappear from public life while his state television broadcasts pre-recorded footage to make it appear he hasn't. Vladimir Putin is afraid, and the story of what he is afraid of and why right now tells us something profound about where this war is going and what happens when the most powerful man in Russia no longer feels powerful at all. Let's build this carefully because the details matter here. Since the beginning of 2026, Ukraine has been conducting a campaign that military analysts are still struggling to fully categorize. Using long-range drone strikes of increasing precision, Ukrainian forces have not just been hitting Russian military infrastructure. They have been hunting people. Senior Russian military officers, men with stars on their shoulders, men who operate in what Russia considered the safe, unreachable rear, have been killed, one by one, in Moscow, in Krasnodar, beyond the Arctic Circle. On December 22, 2025, Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov was killed in Moscow. The next day, another attack struck Russian security officials at the same location. These were not accidents. These were not random strikes. This was a message delivered twice in the same place in consecutive days, and the message landed hard. According to the intelligence report, Russia's chief of the general staff, Valery Gerasimov, the man who runs the Russian military, convened an emergency security meeting. What happened inside that meeting is extraordinary. Gerasimov, the FSB director, Alexander Bortnikov, and the head of the Russian National Guard, Viktor Zolotov, reportedly had a severe falling out. Three of the most powerful men in Russia's security apparatus blaming each other, pointing fingers. Because Ukraine was killing their generals and nobody could stop it. That moment, that meeting, is when something shifted inside the Kremlin. Here's the part that matters, and I want you to sit with this for a moment. According to the intelligence report, Vladimir Putin is not primarily afraid of Ukraine. He is afraid of Russians. The document states it plainly. Putin fears not so much Ukrainian attacks as a conspiracy by members of the Russian political elite. He is specifically concerned about the possibility of an assassination attempt carried out using drones not by Ukrainian operatives, but by people inside his own circle of power. Think about what that means. The man who has ruled Russia with an iron grip for over 2 decades, who jailed his opponents, exiled his critics, and eliminated his rivals, is now lying awake in a bunker beneath the Russian countryside, wondering which one of his own people is going to try to kill him. And one name keeps surfacing in connection with coup fears: Sergei Shoigu, the former defense minister who was quietly moved out of that role in May 2024 and repositioned as Secretary of the Security Council, a title that sounds powerful but represents, in the architecture of Kremlin politics, a significant demotion. Shoigu retains deep military connections, and according to this intelligence report, Putin's people view him as a figure linked to the risk of a coup attempt. The arrest of Shoigu's former first deputy, Ruslan Salakov, on March 5th of this year was interpreted inside the Kremlin not as routine law enforcement, but as a violation of the unspoken guarantees that protect the Russian elite from prosecution. The message it sent: that no one is S. AFA, and when no one is safe, everyone becomes dangerous. Let's talk about what this actually reveals, because the mainstream coverage keeps getting stuck on the surface. The story is not simply that Putin has tightened his security detail. Leaders do that. The story is the reason and what that reason tells us about the structural condition of Putin's regime right now. What we are watching in real time is the beginning of what political scientists call authoritarian fragility. It's the phase that comes after a dictator's legitimacy has been eroded, not destroyed, but eroded by a war that promised glory and delivered stalemate. The Russian economy is under pressure. The military has suffered casualties that Moscow still refuses to publicly acknowledge. And now, Ukraine is demonstrating something that cuts deeper than any battlefield loss. That the people Putin has trusted to protect him, the generals, the intelligence chiefs, the security services, cannot protect themselves. When your bodyguards are afraid, the thing they are supposed to protect becomes very fragile indeed. The Federal Protective Service, the FSO, has responded by tightening every protocol around Putin's life. 2 rounds of security screening for anyone who enters the presidential administration. No internet-capable phones for anyone in his proximity. No public transportation for his personal staff. Surveillance cameras inside the homes of people who cook his meals and take his photographs. These are not the actions of a confident leader. These are the actions of a man managing an acute threat from within his own walls. Zoom out, because this story is not just about one man's paranoia. What is happening inside the Kremlin right now is the beginning of a succession crisis in slow motion. When the intelligence services of a nuclear-armed nation begin to blame each other in emergency meetings, when a former defense minister is being quietly positioned as a potential coup risk, when the president of that country is moving between underground bunkers and allowing state television to manufacture the illusion of his normalcy, you are watching the early architecture of political instability inside one of the most consequential governments on Earth. History gives us a clear template for what comes next in these situations. It does not always end in a coup. Sometimes it ends in a purge, sometimes in a dramatic show of strength designed to reassert control. Sometimes, and this is the outcome that carries the highest global stakes, it ends in a decision made by a frightened, isolated leader to escalate, in an attempt to unify the nation behind him through fear. Leaders who fear their own people have a terrible track record of making rational decisions about foreign policy. That is the part of this story that has implications far beyond Russia's borders. Why does this matter to you, to people watching tonight who are not military analysts, not intelligence officers, not Kremlinologists? Because a nuclear power with an increasingly isolated, paranoid leader surrounded by security services that are turning on each other, managing a war it cannot win, and broadcasting fiction to its own people to maintain the appearance of stability is a different kind of threat than a Russia that is simply powerful and aggressive. It is less predictable. It is less stable. And instability in a country with Russia's arsenal is not an abstraction. It is a live variable in every security calculation being made in Washington, Brussels, Kyiv, and Beijing right now. The question isn't whether Putin is afraid. The evidence suggests he is. The question is what a frightened Vladimir Putin decides to do about it. And here is what I keep coming back to tonight. If Sergei Shoigu, the man now associated in intelligence reports with coup risk, is being positioned as a threat, what does Putin do next? Does he move against Shoigu directly? And if he does that accelerate exactly the kind of elite fracturing he is trying to prevent? And the second question, perhaps the more consequential one, how long can a government maintain the fiction of normalcy when the man at its center is hiding underground and the people around him know it? There is an old observation about power one that tends to surface in moments like this one. It goes something like this. The most dangerous thing about a powerful man is not what he does when he feels strong. It is what he does when he feels cornered. Vladimir Putin built a system designed to make him untouchable. Tonight, according to intelligence agencies and investigative journalists who have done the hard work of documenting it, that system is showing its cracks, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The bunker, real. The surveillance cameras in the cooks' kitchens are real. The falling out between the generals is real. And the war that was supposed to be over in days, is grinding into its 5th year with no end in sight. History does not repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes with uncomfortable precision. And right now, in the winter of 2026, it is rhyming with something we have seen before. Something that did not end well for anyone. We will continue watching this closely